Hey,
Hey,
I wanted to inquire you about what you meant by religions are fake.
that uh, men create gods and men create religions, that God does not speak to humans and give his rules and regulations for people to write books. It's all man made. God never spoke to Moses. God never sent Jesus. God didn't talk to Muhammad. It's all lies. It's man made. It's created for the purpose of controlling and manipulating people with lies. None of it's true.
Okay, so you don't believe God created humans, you believe humans created God?
Correct. Yeah.
And what is the reasoning for that?
To Humans create gods so that they can manipulate and control other humans.
But this could also be the case if God existed. Like, we could presume God exists and we say, oh, God would want you to do this, or God needs you to do this. So that doesn't really make sense.
Why would God need us to do anything?
No, I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, right? We don't have to make up God to say, oh, God would want us to do this. God can still exist and people can still use that to manipulate other people. So why do you believe God is man made?
So you're saying people could manipulate a real God?
I'm saying people could manipulate other people and form cults under the belief of God, even if God exists. God does not need to not exist for people to manipulate other people to do
Well,
said activities.
so if we just look at reality, and so instead of looking at books that we know 100% was written by humans, all books were written by humans, and you can't disagree with that. You can believe that God told somebody what to write, but if you want to talk about the Bible or the Quran, then, but I'm an expert on the Bible. I can show you thousands of contradictions in this book that prove that God didn't tell any human what to write. But let's put the books aside for a second. Let's just look at reality. I'm 47 years old. I've got 47 years of life experience. And my mom is like 70, and I know the life that my mom has lived. My grandparents just died a few years ago, so they were like 80, 90 years old, and I've talked to them about their life, and and we all live the Christian worldview, and what we can definitively see and observe with our eyes is that God never shows up. God never does anything supernatural. God doesn't defend the innocent and the weak. He does not hold guilty people accountable. He does absolutely nothing. He doesn't ever show up. He doesn't ever speak. He doesn't ever do anything good or bad. We live in a world where everything is completely physical and observable, and we can study it with science, and there is no supernatural thing that ever happens. We have people that are brainwashed and that they tell themselves lies and they believe things that are false, but that's also physical. It's called mental handicaps. But in the observable world, there is no God. And if God exists, but he chooses to be distant and invisible and doesn't want to interact with us, then the intelligent person would say, even if God exists, he chooses to never reveal himself. And that's what the honest person would say. To say that you believe in a God, but yet God never shows up, he doesn't speak, the Bible says that Jesus said, whoever believes in me can ask anything in my name and receive it so that the Father can be glorified through the Son. You see, if the Bible was true and if Jesus was true, then we would know who God is, because you could go to a hospital and you could pray for some kid or any sick person in the name of Jesus. And if you look at James chapter 5, verse 15, it says, if anyone among you is sick, let him go to the elders of the church. He will pray for you and lay his hands on you, and you will be healed. This does not happen. This proves the Bible is false. This proves that whatever claims that the Bible makes is completely unreliable. That you cannot trust the Bible because it makes claims that we can test and prove are lies.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't disagree with anything you said, but going to let's separate from like the Abrahamic religions. Do you talk about any religions that are not Abrahamic?
Well, I'm mostly talking about Abrahamic religions because that's what I spent all my life being, a Christian.
Oh, okay. So then I guess just like to the center of the question, you don't believe in God, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you want to hear my argument for God and see if you have any contentions?
Sure, let's hear it.
Okay, so it's going to be two conclusions and a few premises. The first premise is going to be on the lines of contingent minds either have a naturalistic explanation or it has a personal explanation. Do you disagree with that?
I don't understand what you mean by it.
Yeah, so I'm saying like minds. You know what a mind is, right?
A mind, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So a mind either has like a naturalistic explanation, as in like it can be explained through the brain, that like
Right,
the brain creates consciousness or
right.
consciousness is the brain or
And
things
we
of
can
that
prove
nature.
that with science. They've studied the brain a lot. We can observe. They even do open skull surgery, and they touch a part of the brain, and they ask the person the question, and they can take away a person's memory just by touching a certain part of the brain. So we know with absolute fact, reproducible science in the medical field, that the brain is the source of consciousness.
That doesn't show a causal link or source though. That just shows a correlation.
It shows that the mind is a physical thing that can be affected by physical processes.
Yeah,
It
that's
is not
fine.
a supernatural thing. And if your brain doesn't work, then you die, because your brain is the center that keeps your body alive.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I don't feel like any positions disagree that there's a correlation between the brain and the mind. That if you affect some part of the brain, it's correspondingly going to affect some portion of the mind, right? And it
Right,
makes
because
sense
that's a
that it's
fact.
that way. Yeah.
That's a fact. That's demonstrably true.
So then why does this correlation equate to that of causation?
I don't know what you mean. Causation. What?
Well, you say the brain causes the mind, right?
The brain is the source of consciousness. The physical brain is, and the mind is a physical thing. You can get a head injury in a car crash, and you will lose your personality. You'll lose your ability to speak. You can lose your ability to walk, because it is a physical injury to the brain. We
Yeah.
know this. The brain is the source of being able to speak, being able to think, being able to even make your heart beat. Your brain is the source for everything in your life.
Have you ever heard of the CD analogy before?
CD analogy? I don't know.
Yeah. So let's say we have a CD. We would agree that CD is not a music in itself, right?
Right. The CD is a disc.
Yeah, so the CD is just a disc that has a bunch of divots in it. And then when you put it in a CD player, the CD player makes this music. If you affect the CD, like you scratch it up or you break it in half, then obviously the CD player is not going to be able to play the CD properly. But that doesn't mean that the CD and the CD player are the same exact thing. We know that they're different. The
The
same
CD and the CD player are two different things, right?
Yeah, the same way that the brain is equatable to that of the CD, and the brain has neural patterns, the same way a CD has divots, and the CD player would be that of the mind. So the mind looks at the neural patterns and acts out the neural patterns. But if you get into like a car crash and these neural patterns are disrupted, well, yeah, it makes sense that the mind won't be able to interpret this properly.
And all that is a physical thing that can be affected by physical damage. So what, are you trying to prove that the mind is something other than physically associated with the brain?
Yeah, I don't believe that they are one and the same or that one is emergent from one another.
So what is your evidence that the mind is anything other than physical?
Yeah, so have you ever heard of what it's like to be a bat, the thought room experiment?
To be a bat?
Yeah.
I don't know what experiment you're talking about.
So it's like a famous thought experiment from Thomas Nagel. I hope I'm saying that right. But basically, let's say we had a bat and we did an MRI scan on it. Actually, we can just cut open the skull to measure the head and we can just activate every neural pattern possible. We could know every single detail about the brain. But if I asked you after observing the brain, can you tell me what it is like to use echolocation or what it is like to use echolocation? Would you ever be able to answer that?
We Humans can do echolocation.
You think humans can do echolocation?
Yes, they do this all the time. Blind people have little clickers in their hand, and they learn how to identify by using echolocation. We're not as good at it as bats are, but we do use echolocation, and people are trained to use echolocation that are blind.
Okay, so then let's change the question from echolocation. If I asked you from observing the physical brain of the bat, if I asked you, do you know what it is like to be a bat from these physical properties? Would you be able to answer that?
No, I don't know what it's like to be a bat. No.
So then that shows that there's more than the physical brain, which is experience, showing that just because we know what the brain does doesn't mean we know what the mind is going to do, showing that they're two distinct objects.
A bat has a different brain than a human. So the bat's brain is designed for a bat, and the human brain is designed for a human. Well, designed, I mean, we have, if we call it evolved or whatever, but humans and bats are different. And just because you don't know what it's like to be a pig doesn't mean anything, except that because we don't have pig brains, we have human brains.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the analogy, to show that like we as humans, if we look at a different animal and we look at the physical processes of this animal, we would never, ever, ever know what it is like to be that animal. So there's more there than the actual physical thing. It's just going to be that of experience.
I have no idea what you're trying to say. Makes no sense.
I'm saying
So humans can only know what it's like to be a human. We cannot know what it's like to be a pig or a bat because we don't have a pig or a bat's brain. It is the brain that physically gives you your ability to think and experience.
Yeah, that's the point. It's to show that experience can't be derived from physical processes.
Oh my goodness. Your brain and your experience is tied to your experiences and the things that your brain learns to experience and do. Everything about your life is physically tied to your brain. And that's the end of the story. There is nothing mystical about it. Your brain is the source of your consciousness. Because when your brain dies, or when certain parts of your brain is damaged, then you lose the ability to do whatever that part of your brain controls.
Yeah, so this just goes back to the CD analogy. The CD is going to be damaged and the CD player is not going to be able to read the CD properly, which makes perfect sense.
Which means that it is a physical process. It means it's 100% a physical process. It's as long as the CD player and the CD are both in good physical condition, then you'll hear music. If there is physical damage to either the CD player or the CD, then you won't be able to hear the music. The same way as with life. As long as your brain and body is functional, you can experience life to the fullest. If your brain or body gets damaged, then your life gets limited in some way.
Okay, so then let me ask you another question. Are you aware of savant syndrome?
No.
Okay, so savant syndrome, it's a very rare disease for people that are mentally handicapped, but essentially some part of their brain is going to be mentally screwed up or physically screwed up. Like a famous example of this would be Kim Peek, where he lost his hippocampus and his cerebellum. But even after losing his hippocampus and cerebellum, he had extraordinary memory, to the fact that he could remember 9,000 encyclopedias, every city in America, every state, every phone number in a telephone book. He memorized all these things, even though he didn't have the hippocampus, which is responsible for your memory. So if there is a causal link, how can this be explained?
Well, if you're smarter without a part of your brain, then we ought to be cutting out everybody's part of their brain so we could all be smarter.
Yeah, but that's not going to be the case for everyone.
So
right? That's why it's a disease.
So you think that that this person was better off without part of his brain or not?
Seeing the results, probably better off without that part of his brain. Sure.
So he wasn't limited in any way.
No, he was not limited at all. He was enhanced afterwards.
Okay, well, I'm not familiar with that case.
Well, you can just look up Kim
But
Peek. They made a whole
but
Netflix documentary on him.
but even what you're saying, it's still saying that the brain is what affected his life. So you're still talking about the brain affecting his abilities because that's what the brain does.
Yeah, so this is going to be a correlation. But if it was a causal relation, that if the brain caused memory or the hippocampus caused memory, then it would make sense that if there was no hippocampus, then there will also be no memory. So once
Well,
again,
there
this
are
only shows
parts
a
of the brain
correlation.
that so I'm not an expert on the brain, but there are people that do brain surgery and then they will tell you what parts of the brain do what because they've studied it enough. They've got scientific evidence and it's reproducible. They know that everybody's brain is essentially the same and certain parts of the brain do certain things. So, uh, so, but I'm frozen, so I'm going to have to reset my thing just to come back. So I'll be back in just a second.
All right.
All right. I'll drop him and pick up Ataru. I'm probably going to shut down before too long, maybe after Ataru. Oops, I think he didn't even connect. So, I think I'll just shut down now. I appreciate all of y'all being here. Y'all check out the links in my profile. Give me a follow and check out my website. Join my Discord. All my links are in the TikTok profile. It's in a link tree. I've got a lot of information to share. Good night, Joyland. And I see two people in here. I think I'm just going to shut down for right now. We'll talk again. I may go live again tomorrow. So y'all give me a follow, and we can continue our conversation tomorrow.
Good night, Jeff.
Good night, precious. Good night, all.
Bye.